Fernando, if you were in my shoes, a small retail investor, I'm 26, relatively inexperienced, relatively low capital, but I'm looking to build up my capital. I do have a high risk appetite. And let's say that you're looking for, you're looking into Atico, but you also want some diversification in the copper space. What other three companies would you say are worth looking into?
Well, Atico for sure. given that you have risk appetite, but of course Atico will be one. Now there are not many companies like Atico in the copper space. There are not many junior copper companies producing copper right now. So if you want that kind of exposure to copper, you have Atico, perhaps a couple more, and then you have to jump to the mid tiers, to the larger companies. Let's say Capstone is a good example, for instance. Then you have that copper exposure. I do like some of those as copper exposure. If you are bullish in copper, now those are lower risk, I think, bets with what's going to happen with price and the potential for these companies to generate cash. Those are lower risk and therefore will probably yield lower returns. But those are if you would like copper exposure, those are names I will look for sure.
Okay, so that's Capstone, and what else do we have? Like, I don't know, Copper Mountain. Is that some of the names that you maybe like?
Yeah, well, there in that segment that produce between 30,000 to 50,000 tons of copper per year. There are not many names either, but in that range, I will be all over that production range for companies in North America, primarily.
Okay, and so what it is that you're really looking for? You mentioned a couple of things. Are you looking for pounds in the ground? Or are you looking for pounds that are being produced? You're looking at the jurisdiction. As someone who's been doing this for such a long time, what is it exactly that you're looking for in a copper company?
All of the above.
Okay, all of them.
We
about grade?
We of course it has to make business sense, right? We are operators, so we're not speculating here. We don't like companies that will throw a lot of cash during the good cycle, and then you will have to shut down during the bad cycle, because it will come at some point, right? We all know that. It's a matter of when, not if. So we're looking for assets that we can operate through cycles. And that, of course, will have to do not only with the grade. The grade is just one variable in the equation. We'll have to also be part of what the cost is. It's an underground, it's an open pit, what type of deposit. You can successfully operate 0.5, 0.7% copper, depending on the context. And you might have 2% copper and not be able to operate it, right? So it all depends. They're just pieces of the equation. You have to put the equation together and see if you have a good mining business with what you have. And it could be, we don't do greenfields. It has to be post-discovery. So we have to know there's something there that we believe is worthwhile. But from there up to producing asset, we will look at the whole spectrum. And we think that given the right asset, we can generate value with the asset at any given place in that spectrum.
So don't look for explorers. I mean, maybe some exploration upside, like for example, your company has exploration upside, but you also have something else to back it up. And otherwise it's a wild card. I like that. Look for lower cost, maybe the lowest quartile of the world. El Roble mine, one of the top 10 or top 5, whatever, lowest cost. What are some of the dangers then? Like what are some of the things that you think maybe retail investors that, we talked about it a few times throughout this conversation, retail investors a lot of times, like myself, do a lot of desk research. I've never been to a mine myself. So what do you think are some of the dangers that I might be missing that I should be taking into account when I'm looking into copper stocks? As someone who's had boots in the ground for over a decade now. What do you say, Fernando?
I'll say look at the management. Look at the management in detail, what they have done with the asset. Have they been able to create value in terms of the asset? Whether the market gave them love for that or not. Take a look at their management skills in terms of a mining business. on the ground, um, and judge them for that. And as many seasoned investors will tell you, a good portion of your success as an investor will be betting on the right management team.
Mm.
Um, and then after that, I will look for the quality of the asset. Even with the best management team that you can find, a lousy asset will be very challenging.
Mm.
Uh, but even with a not so good management team, a very good asset will help you a lot to get through it. So I think between management and the asset, if you get both of both those right, you have a good portion of what it takes to be successful with your investing. Now, of course, the third one will be the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction always brings risks, and you need to assess and evaluate the risk of the jurisdiction very carefully.
Hmm.
Um, but the rest is just what the price does, right? What
Yeah.
type of commodity you are investing in.
Makes sense. I was, to be honest, I was looking for something like a spicy answer because you're down in South America and you hear these things. They say it's among the most dangerous places to be in, like in terms of, again, I don't know, but you hear these things like corruption, drug wars, and all these things. Is it so? You say jurisdiction. Let's maybe talk specifically South America because when it comes down to copper, if you're building a copper portfolio, there's no way to avoid South America, I think. Is it still a safe place over there and a manageable place from risk perspective to invest in if you're a small retail investor who cannot put those boots on the ground? What do you think in terms of corruption, bureaucracy, and all these things? Is that a risk that maybe I'm missing just in general?
All of the above. You mentioned all of them. That doesn't mean that you cannot have a viable mining business. By the way, you're going to have to deal with most or some of that for sure. But I think that every jurisdiction will have its own challenges. You
Hmm.
just need to understand them. And my advice to your audience, to investors, will be: do not think of the jurisdiction as being the same. Colombia is not the same everywhere you go. The same goes for Peru and Chile. Understand whether the difference between each place within a jurisdiction. Understand whether the challenges of the area where the project is located and how management is addressing those. Are they talking about it? Are they addressing it? Right? And challenges within a jurisdiction will change from side to side.
Hmm.
I still believe, for instance, in Peru as a mining friendly jurisdiction, um, and that might be, of course, controversial. But I honestly, personally believe still in Peru, and I think that I will be, as an investor, a lot more careful in terms of understanding more the dynamics of the area where the project is located, rather than crossing Peru as a mining friendly jurisdiction altogether.
Hmm. That's a very good point to not just put them all under one umbrella. First of all, not all the countries in South America are all the same. But then in the same time, not even all provinces are the same. You can have a province when there's a lot of protests and indigenous people who don't want the mine over there, and you can have a few 100 kilometers down the road, and you have a fully operating mine. That's a very good point. Just takes a lot more research into the jurisdiction and all. That's a nice point. Yeah, Fernando,
Absolutely, it does.
yeah, I was gonna say I've taken a lot of your time today. We're already over the time that you promised me, and I think this should do for the grilling today. But as you've noticed, though, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm probably forgetting to ask you a lot of important questions here. What is something that you came hoping to talk about, but I failed to bring up? Maybe about the copper market or about Atico, whatever you feel talking about.
I think you asked most of the important questions for sure. I am very, very bullish on what copper is going to do in the next 10 years. And everyone's talking about demand. Watch out for supply. I think this is going to come from the supply side more than the demand side. Notwithstanding that the demand side is going to be very strong too. And if you want to be part of that copper run in the next 10 years, there's several different ways to do it. For sure, one is upcoming junior company that wants to getting to the mid-tier producers, and that is Atico. I think we have the management team. I think we have good assets.